It is not simply about toxic relationships, suspicious partners, or emotionally unstable people. This is about something far deeper. It is about the terrifying moment when a human being no longer sees reality as it is, but begins living inside a world created by fear, insecurity, and emotional projection. And once that happens, suffering becomes addictive. Many people watching this may already know exactly what I mean. You meet someone, you fight constantly, you promise yourself it's over, then somehow you return again and again and again. Outsiders look at the relationship and ask a simple question: why don't you just leave? But the people trapped inside these relationships are not fighting logic. They are fighting their own perception of reality. That is why evidence rarely helps. Facts do not calm them. Proof does not reassure them. Reason does not penetrate the emotional system that has already decided what is true. This is where modern psychology and ancient Eastern philosophy begin to intersect in a deeply unsettling way. The ancient Tibetan text, known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, repeatedly warns humanity about one central danger. What you see may not be reality. It may be a projection created by your own mind. At first, this sounds mystical, but psychologically it is astonishingly accurate. Human beings do not simply react to reality. We react to interpretations. And when fear becomes powerful enough, interpretation becomes stronger than facts. A person begins with anxiety. Then the mind searches for a cause. Then suspicion appears. Then emotion hardens into certainty. Eventually, they are no longer observing the world. They are defending a story. This is why some individuals become trapped in endless cycles of conflict, obsession, emotional collapse, reconciliation, and renewed suspicion. Not because the relationship is healthy, but because the relationship is fused with their identity. Pain becomes familiar. Chaos becomes emotionally meaningful. Conflict becomes proof of attachment. And that is the moment a relationship stops being love and starts becoming psychological dependency. Modern psychology often describes this through three overlapping structures: pathological jealousy, paranoid cognitive patterns, borderline attachment dynamics. When combined, these patterns create relationships that are emotionally explosive, psychologically exhausting, and extraordinarily difficult to escape. Let us examine them carefully. 1. When feelings become more powerful than facts. In ordinary jealousy, people respond to evidence. In pathological jealousy, evidence becomes irrelevant. The emotional conclusion appears first. The proof is collected afterward. Imagine a husband comes home late from work. Nothing unusual happened. Traffic was heavy. Meetings ran long. His phone battery died. But before any explanation is heard, the mind has already reached its verdict. He must be seeing someone else. Notice what happened. The suspicion did not emerge from evidence. The evidence was selected to support an existing fear. This is psychologically critical, because once emotional certainty replaces objective evaluation, the person no longer asks, "What is true?" Instead, they ask, "How can I confirm what I already fear?" This is why reassurance often fails. Phone records? They could be fake. Location history? He probably deleted something. Co-workers denying the affair? They're covering for him. Do you see the danger? Every attempt to disprove. The suspicion becomes incorporated into the suspicion itself. At this stage, the psychological system becomes closed. The person is no longer capable of self-correction. And this is precisely why many toxic relationships become impossible to stabilize through logic alone. Because the conflict is no longer external, it is internal. 2. The paranoid mind does not see events, it sees intentions. Now we move deeper. Paranoid cognitive patterns do not merely produce suspicion, they produce narratives. Every event becomes connected. Every coincidence becomes meaningful. Every neutral action becomes intentional. A woman at a party smiles politely. Most people see friendliness, but someone trapped inside paranoid cognition may think she's pretending to be nice because she's hiding something. A delayed text message becomes manipulation. A private conversation becomes conspiracy. Silence becomes hostility. The world slowly transforms into a psychological battlefield. And the terrifying part is this: the person experiencing it often feels completely rational, because emotionally, the threat feels real. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of human psychology. People do not collapse simply because enemies exist. They collapse because they become trapped in a system that constantly generates enemies. Again, the Tibetan Book of the Dead warned about this centuries ago. It described how fear projects terrifying realities onto the external world. In modern language, we might say, the mind externalizes inner instability. In other words, the danger is not always outside. Sometimes the danger is the lens through which reality is interpreted. 3. Why some people cannot leave relationships that hurt them. Now we arrive at the most painful layer of all: borderline relational dynamics. This is the structure behind relationships where people say, "I can't live with them, but I can't live without them either." These relationships operate through emotional extremes. Love becomes obsession. Disappointment becomes betrayal. Distance becomes abandonment. The emotional system has no stable middle ground. A person may say in the morning, "You are the most important person in my life," and by evening, "You ruined my life." The emotional reversal can happen within hours, not because the external reality changed dramatically, but because emotional regulation itself is unstable. This creates what psychology calls splitting. People are viewed as entirely good or entirely evil, perfect or monstrous, safe or dangerous. The mind struggles to integrate complexity, and this creates exhausting relational cycles, pulling someone close, pushing them away, begging them not to leave, attacking them for staying. Why does this happen? Because underneath the anger is usually something far more primitive: the terror of abandonment. Many individuals trapped in destructive relationships are not actually addicted to love. They are addicted to emotional survival. The relationship becomes psychologically fused with safety, identity, and self-worth, which means even painful attachment can feel safer than loneliness. This is why people sometimes remain inside relationships that are clearly destroying them, because to them, separation feels emotionally equivalent to annihilation, the most dangerous illusion of all. Here is the central insight. Human beings rarely suffer only because of reality itself. We suffer because of the meaning we attach to reality. And when fear, shame, insecurity, and emotional dependency distort perception long enough, the distortion begins to feel normal. Eventually, the suffering becomes familiar, and familiar suffering is extraordinarily difficult to abandon. This is why some people unconsciously recreate the same painful relationship patterns for decades. Different partner, same emotional script, different conflict, same psychological structure. The ancient Buddhist warning becomes profoundly relevant here. When you cling to illusion long enough, the illusion begins to control you. That sentence may be one of the most psychologically accurate observations ever written, because many people are not actually trapped by another person. They are trapped by the emotional world they constructed around that person. And until that internal structure is understood, the cycle continues. Not once, but repeatedly. So the real question is no longer, why is that person so jealous? Or, why can't they trust anyone? The deeper question is this: what kind of emotional reality are they living inside? Because once fear becomes identity, people stop searching for truth. They start defending emotional survival. And that is why logic alone rarely heals these relationships. Healing begins only when a person becomes capable of questioning the reality created by their own fear, not denying emotion, not suppressing pain, but recognizing that emotion is not always truth. That realization is the beginning of psychological awakening. And perhaps that is the real purpose of this discussion: not to judge others, but to ask ourselves a difficult question. Am I seeing reality clearly, or am I defending a story created by my wounds? If this lecture resonated with you, make sure to subscribe, share this video, And join us for part 3, where we explore the deeper origins of these patterns. Childhood attachment wounds, fear of abandonment, shame and comparison, emotionally suppressive environments, and the hidden experiences that shape destructive adult relationships. Because until we understand where the illusion began, we will continue repeating it. And sometimes the most dangerous prison is not a relationship. It is a perception we never learned to question.